rosse bandiere, o proletari alla riscossa, bandiera rossa trionferà. Bandiera rossa deve trionfar, bandiera rossa deve trionfar, bandiera rossa deve trionfar, e viva il comunismo e la libertà, avanti il popolo alla riscossa, bandiera rossa, bandiera rossa.
Meeting, which is about and for women who are involved in the struggle. As multiple crises converge on us, the struggle for a better world is ever more essential. We're facing climate catastrophe, the virus, economic crisis, ever more vicious sexual violence, gender-based violence, unchecked rape, intimate partner violence, child poverty, and crises of political leadership. War and migration are forcing 60 million people to walk across the world. In all of this, women have little choice but to protest and to organise. Our struggles are often different, complex and harsh, but there's joy in resistance, and in the struggle we develop the power that we can eventually, we hope, change the world. Solidarity and sisterhood give each of us strength in our own struggle. Today, tonight, because we're in different times, in different time zones for this meeting, we're going to hear from women in struggle. In Belarus, from Eleanor and Christina, from Zimbabwe, from Namatai, from Zira in Pakistan, Tia in Louisville in the USA, Nomsa in South Africa, Jabu in Oxford, Amy and Lou in Doncaster, and from Sister Space in London. Our time is very short, so each speaker will have about 7 minutes to speak. We're hoping our first speaker will be from Belarus, but I'm hearing that she's not here yet, so we'll move on to another speaker. Thank you.
These are her slogans. Our future has been stolen, we have to get it back. All of us must now become activists. And for that, she's in fear of her life. And she's fighting for a generation, and she's fighting for a whole generation of women and the future of the country of Zimbabwe and Southern Africa. I'd love you to hear her voice if I could just play it, and I hope it works.
Great. I am a young woman, and I believe that we have to speak against such things because these things will not bring peace in the long run. Whether these women are coming forward and they're talking about it as allegations, these are young women. Most of the people who've been affected are young women, and as a young person, I can only stand to say that we have to talk about it in an objective fashion, and we cannot have a dialogue such as this one and leave and not have talked about this. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to talk about is that we as young people are the hardest hit by everything that is happening. If you look at the people who've been hardest hit by the violence, the people are getting abducted, beaten up, the people are getting arrested. We've had reports of young people as young as 6 years old, as young as 11 years old, being taken and beaten up. We have to talk about these things because they are affecting young people. Now, please.
That's just a fragment of a really marvelous speech. You can just picture her intense speech, her rationality, her intelligence, the vitality of a young woman in struggle against a despotic regime. All of that against rape of women, women who are abducted, drugged, raped, and dumped naked outside the main cities, and the humiliation and the abuse that they're receiving. And many young women are then taken from the hospitals where they are getting treatment and then brought to forcibly by the police and taken to the courts. And she's speaking against all of that and for a people which is rising to its feet. Can I say her name again? Namatai Kwekweza. Namatai Kwekweza. I'd like us all to say it. Namatai Kwekweza. We are hearing you, even if we can't see you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think if it's all right with everybody, I will next ask Tia from Louisville to explain what's happening there. And I know that now we do have Vera has joined us, which is really good. So can we go to Tia, please?
Okay, yes, thank you. Good afternoon, evening, everyone. My name is Tia Edison, and I have been raised in Louisville, Kentucky for the last 40 years. I am a teacher, but first I was an activist. No, first I was a mother, and then I became an activist, and then I became a teacher. So just FYI, like I originally did the first police brutality rally in 1998 in Louisville, Kentucky, in the same spot that we're occupying right now. And we fought right after that for a civilian police review board that has subpoena power, because at the time police officers were, you know, they have that the immunity that they get away with, and so, and they were policing themselves. So we were successful in 1999 of getting that passed. But the city and the county decided they wanted to merge, and so when they merged, it sunsetted that civilian police review board, and so since 2000 we have not had one with subpoena power. And now that leads us up to March 13th of this year. And there was 5 no-knock warrants served in Louisville that night or that day, all signed by one judge within 5 minutes. So basically she didn't read any of the information that was on the no-knock warrants, because the information, if she would have saw that the no-knock warrants, the information on there was 2 months old, and normally they say that like you usually get a warrant within 48 hours of like investigating. So they had waited 2 months, got the 5 no-knock warrants, and then they had actually went on Elliott Street and got the guy that they were looking for at like 11:40 p.m. The cops that were at Breonna's house, they knew that Jamarcus was already locked up when they decided to bust in. They busted in. Breonna was asleep, but when they was ramming on the door, it woke them up. They got up. Her boyfriend had a gun because he was a legal carried concealed weapon, carrier, and he had already had an encounter with the ex-boyfriend, the one they had locked up. So he assumed that it was that guy coming back. He fired, well, the door busted open. He fired one shot kind of like towards the leg, like toward down. He wasn't trying to like kill anybody. He just wanted like a warning shot down. And the next thing you know, at least 20-something bullets rang. Breonna got hit 8 times. Kenneth got arrested for shooting a cop, and this went on for about 2 months. They gave us false information in the media. All they said that it was a no-knock warrant on a drug dealer, and the drug dealer shot back, and they end up killing her. And so once we got into it, we looked into it, it was actually a gentrification plan that they want to get rid of her ex-boyfriend on that block in the West End, which is predominantly a Black neighborhood that they're trying to make white again because it's downtown. And there's just a lot of information on that part alone, that they were over policing that street in order to keep on putting out public notices on the houses so that they could get rid of everybody in the house. And actually July, or I think it was like July 20th or something like that was her birthday. On her birthday, the guy that had the house that Jamarcus stayed in sold it to the city for $1. Like, and that's what they have been doing. That was the plan anyways, to sell. They give these renters public notices, and after about 4 or 5 public notices, they basically tell them like, you have to turn over the house, or we can take you to court for all this public notice ordinances and everything else and kind of take the house from you. So he donated it to the city for $1 on her birthday after she was dead. So we have been on the streets. I'm with the Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. We have been in existence for 45 years. We were created after Angela Davis became a political prisoner. We were created with the Black Panthers and Ann and Carl Braden, who was a white couple, who was white allies. And if you don't know about them, please look them up because they're amazing individuals. I was actually mentored by Ann Braden before she passed away in 2006. So when all this happened, you know, me and my colleagues, which is all women of color, that have been working in the organization, we jumped up and started doing stuff when COVID hit, because we wanted to give our community PPE kits and masks and stuff like that. So I had wrote a grant to the city for just $25,000 to get that. They wouldn't give it to us. And so we were out in these streets every day. And then that happened, and we said, we want to occupy this park. And the park is very significant in that it was in, you know, 200, 300 years ago, it was used to auction off slaves in Louisville. And it's the center, like right around that park is the correction office, the courts, the mayor's house, like all of that it's the central business district of downtown Louisville. And it's in the center of all the jurisdiction, like system. And so we decided to be in that space and occupy that space to let them know that we were not moving until the officers were fired, arrested, and charged. And it has been 116 days now since we have been occupying that space. We have been met with police brutality almost every single day. As a teacher, so when it started, we had a lot of young people very, very angry. If you have to understand the significance of gun trauma, racial trauma, trauma that you are living in around your neighborhood, and you ball it all up into one person, and you don't provide them with any type of counseling or any type of help that can help them de-escalate like what is going on, or just process what is going on with them, then you're going to deal with a lot of anger. And so when the first couple of days I was down there, I saw all of these young people, I'm just gonna say 18 to 25, that is young for me, young people that were so angry. And so I knew they would get killed if we did not help them. And so what we did most of the time was we were just trying to de-escalate. We were just trying to talk to them. And one thing as a teacher, I just wanted to listen to them. I wanted to listen to them. My own daughter, she's in the other room, her friend, you know, like it was in the middle of this. And she's like, Mom, my friend's, you know, ex-boyfriend just got killed tonight. And I was like, oh, wow. Like 3 days later, Mom, her current boyfriend just got killed tonight. I said, oh, dang. Like, so I took her over there because all the girlfriends wanted to go over there and comfort her. Then 20 minutes later, my mom says, where is your daughter at? Because it looks like she's at the University of Louisville Hospital. So I called her and I'm like, I thought you was over your friend's house. Well, we were until her brother just got shot and killed. And then a week later, their cousin was shot and killed. Like all of this has been going on. And when you are only 14, 15, 16 years old, you do not know how to process that, especially if there has not been somebody that has been convicted of the crime. You're just full of anger. So you got to understand the process of grievance. And the first one is denial. Then you go into anger. And if you don't get any justice, then you're going to stay in that anger. And that's what the Black community is right now. We are in a state of emergency right now. Like, not only are we fighting justice right now, and we know that we're not going to get it. I have to sit here and watch my children and know that they are looking at our city, and they have been watching me for 100 days, and they know that we're still not going to get justice. We're still, what have we done? What are we doing out here? And then for us to just go back to business as usual, we are still in a slave mentality. You know, if we don't burn this city down, then we are in a slave mentality. Then you might as well say Master just beat us a couple times and then we went back to work, right? That's exactly what they do. And I have been followed. People have came to my house at 3 o'clock in the morning. They have put stuff like, right now I am dealing with the people that I got arrested with. there is an inmate in the jail that has everybody's contact information. That means my mother's address, and he's passing it to all the inmates in there so that they can call my mom and harass her, and they can call all these people. It's a scare tactic, and it is kind of working. You know, I am scared. I'm scared for my life. If you look at Ferguson, 9 of their activists have been killed since Ferguson. If you look that up, and the reason why is because it took so long, and the people, the oppressors are watching, and they know who the organizers are. And after Ferguson, they all end up coming up dead. And so right now, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with oppression. We're dealing with oppressors that are entitled to their privilege, and they will do anything possible to hold on to their privilege. One last thing, 1 week ago, we had like 300 to 400 white militias run up on us. When I say I really did think I was gonna die that day, I really did think I was gonna die. Every 300 of them had probably 15 guns on them, grenades, everything else, and they looked at us and they was yelling Kyle Rittenhouse's name. He was the one that just got caught by shooting protesters in Seattle or Portland or wherever he was, the white guy. They were chanting his name. They were putting cameras in our faces. One lady smacked the camera and he said, "If you hit me again, I'm gonna smack you, bitch." I mean, they were enticing us so much, and there was only like 40 of us to 300 of them. I just knew we was gonna die because I had some young people there with guns, and I was like, I mean, I had to pull one of them and just cry at him and tell him, if you pull that trigger, we are all gonna die today. That's what we're dealing with right now. And it has been Black women standing up. It has been women of color that has been standing up, because at the end of the day, COVID has taught us that people of color have been the essential workers in the United States. Like, they hold the Krogers down. They hold all of the, you know, like cleaning up the hospitals and cleaning up everything that no one cared about until it was COVID. Well, when it comes to social justice, Black women are the essential workers. Every video that you see, there is a Black mother crying behind that. There is like, and I have taken care of Black mothers that have had their sons killed, and I have taken food to them every week. Like, that's what we do. We got to take care of ourselves, and we don't stop, because we know these are our kids. Like, even if like the boys out here, they're not my kids, they are my kids. They look like my son. And so I don't want to take up too much time. We did pass Breonna's Law, which eliminated no-knock warrants. We're trying to get it on a state level now, and then on a national level, because no-knocks are just like, it's just somebody invasion. It's a home invasion by police. So they should have never been, they should never be anyways. And another thing is that we're just dealing with a lot of corruption. We've had 100 murders here, and 74 of them are unsolved for a reason. Most of them are headshots, and I'm concerned about harvesting going on in the middle of us protesting, and they blaming us protesters, like all the attention's on us. That's why everybody's killing everybody, and they're not solving it. So I don't know. That's what's going on here. I hope I answered most of your questions. If you have specific questions, I can't answer those.
Thank you, Tia. We are going to spend some time towards the end of the meeting talking about how we can practically show solidarity for all these struggles. Can I ask Vera Khan to speak next and tell us what's going on in Pakistan?
Yes.
Thank you, Vera. I'm a long-term fan of Zera's work. Continue, please, Zera.
Thank you, Felicity and David, for inviting me to talk on very important issue based on more than half of the world's population. But women are still not considered as complete and are not count among human being. And even whenever she acts like a human being, people said it's imitating men. On the contrary, whenever a woman's name is mentioned, it is considered as weak, defeated, born from a man's rib, or just created for the enjoyment of the men. If this notion of women still exists in 21st century, especially in South Asia and Pakistan, then the status of the women we can imagine, we can't change even. And it is the main root cause of the women exploitation. The recent violence against women cases are one of the many incidents that happen every day, like the motorway, if you know about the motorway gang rape, the 6-year girl was raped and then brutally murdered, transgender was murdered. So these are many cases we have. This is not the first time women have been sexually harassed. Even every day such incident happen and are not even reported, which is complete failure of the state and put the question mark on their role in the work. In Pakistan today, a girl play in street, boy going into religious places or seminaries, female student at school or colleges, and women at the workplaces are not safe from the sexual and gender-based violence. Even the dead bodies of women are not safe from this. Like we have many cases that dead bodies of a women been dig out and the men uh, they're wondering there they raped that dead bodies as well. So, and the most dangerous thing is that when a woman file a case of what happened to her or even fight with courage, the society seem to be blaming herself for the crime committed against her. That happened in motorway case as well, that the government official question on victim why she left home at late night, late hours and went alone to the motorway. So for these reasons, majority women are silenced by sacrificing the crime committed against them in the name of defamation and family honor, and never come out against it. Like even we have protest on 12th September at Press Club. So my picture was using by one channel, and they are using abusive language against women and even threatening on the life for me as well, saying that they can attack on us. So, but if we see that we have the laws and even constitution secure women's that all citizens are equal before law and are entitled to equal protection of law, or there shall be no discrimination on the basis of sex. But there is no proper implementation because of the mindset in the society. But despite of all these incidents, women are constantly struggling to identify themselves as a human being, as a vital part of the society. And there are many examples among us where women have organized and led movement such as Lady Health Workers, Lawyers Movement, Baldia Factory Fire Victims Association, Peasants, and the home-based workers. The fact is that women are double exploited. As first, as a woman, she is considered inferior in the society, and the thing is that everyone talked about it, the domestic violence or the rape cases. We had even we get the data on it as well. Like in Pakistan, how many women were raped in 6 months, or like we have the data on all these basic things, which is consider uh, women as inferior in society. So we have the data on it. As I earlier said that women are the half of the population, so it means she is also half of the workforce. And in capitalist system, they use women as a reserve army. But the movement we had are failed to raise working women issues in Pakistan. No one talks about it much, nor are feminist women and human rights activists. And this is my criticism on those women activists in Pakistan. So even they don't attend our protests except one or two, or whom we called to attend our protests or attend our programs, and even not accepting the leadership from working class because they can't speak English, or they are less educated. Maybe this is the reason that the working women issue is not the priority basis they are taking, or we don't have the data. But we will talk on this later. But so because of these the less attention, we don't have even have the accurate data of women workers, then how many these workers are in Pakistan, or in which sector they are working, and how many women face violence during work or at the workplaces. In Pakistan, we have the government data is saying that the 20% of the workforce is women, which is very low in South Asia. But it's more than, I think it's more than it. But we don't have the accurate data, so we can't say how many women are engaged or the part of the workforce. Majority of women are working in the textile and hosiery garment and even export processing zone. Women workers get less wages than men workers, and the gap is from 22 to 40%. They get less wages from men. Few women are the part of the union, as many factory hire workers on contract or third party system, and also because of so-called values, you can say. There is no transport. Many factory don't have the transportation system, so women travel or use the private services, private transportation. No child care facilities we have in factories. Few factories we have, but there is no facility. Even pregnant, even they don't. Most of the women don't have the pregnancy leave. Women workers have harassed physically and emotionally, verbally, but the cases are unreported. No vigilance committee are exist in factories. If it exists, then that committee don't have any authority or power to act or charge the management. Secondly, majority of the work is becoming informalized in Pakistan, and it is increasing. Uh, in working class, and especially in working class community, right-based approach always restrict when it's all about women workers' rights. So it's easy to use conservative tradition, patriarchal values, and also religion. So it's difficult to mobilize and organize women work in factories, and especially the home-based workers or the informal workers, because they are working at their home. They are the segregated one and restricted by the families to meet with outsider or take part in the union or the movement. So it was the hurdle for us too, and we overcome it by a dedicated group of home-based workers leaders, and they make contact with the women at the local level and formed core group in different localities in Karachi and Hyderabad and other places. So that's how we started to organize, one of the most unorganized sector in one hand, and started campaign to aware public about importance of the million hidden hands, and lobbying with government officials and legislators to recognize them as a formal worker. It was the historical event that without any support, we have done this voluntarily on the voluntary basis. And we have formed national level trade unions of home-based workers and the federation. We have formed our union and federation, registered our federation with the National Industrial Relation Commission in 2009, when we don't have any law in Pakistan, but we have used the constitution, the article 17, that everyone can form their union or or form the association. So we have used that constitutional right, and we have formed the our federation and unions, and then we have started to organize these women, and talking to with the legislators to formulate a law, so legally they can be registered or recognized as a labor. And we are proud to say that we have linked home-based workers as a working class issue. Previously, the issue was raised only on the basis of gender, and most civil society organizations saw it as an issue of just the poor women. So we have linked the home-based issue with the labor issue. So what we did, we worked on three levels basically. First was the awareness at the grassroots level. So we have organized many study circles, meetings with these home-based workers, bring them to one place, and then we have taught them, and even we understand what is the issue they have facing. So we have telling about that how capitalist class or their employer is exploiting them. So how can they organize, how they can get their rights? So this is the first step which we did with these home-based workers, women, especially with the women. Then the second step was the unionization, where we found the relationship of employer and employee. We went for the unionization. We formed unions, like I said previously, at provincial level and then at federal level. And it was first ever trade union of home-based worker registered in Pakistan in 2009, and led by all the women from working class and were themselves engaged with the home-based sector. Now our total membership is more than 3,500. And the third part
Sarah,
was
can I
the
ask you to finish in about 2 minutes? Thank you.
okay. So the third step was the legislation. So we went for the legislation and we talked with the legislators, and due to this step, the act was passed in Sindh, in the one province of Pakistan. So in one province, like in Sindh, more than 300,000, you can say 3 million workers, more than 3 million workers were recognized as a labor in Pakistan history. So, and the rule was also, the rules of act was also passed in this year, January, and we have supported the labor department, and like we did many things. So you can, if you have any question, then I can answer you on this. But the main thing is that but I think that to end gender-based exploitation, it is important that the role of women and their accomplishment in history be discussed or reviewed, so that the status of the women can be restored. At the same time, unless we don't talk about the basic root cause, the concept of the private property, then the situation of the women cannot improve. Equally, you can say, and all this will be possible only when women become the part of the struggle and the movement, and that's we did in Pakistan. Like those women who are scattered, one, their employers are not visible, they can organize themselves for the basic rights, then everyone can organize themselves.
That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Zara. Can I ask now Christina from Belarus to speak?
Felicity, I think it's Elena's going to speak first from Belarus.
Okay, thank you. Elena then.
Hello everyone, hello Felicity, thank you very much. Yes, I will start, and Christina will give you the real situation, the real emotion from the protests, and she will touch up on the women's problems in Belarus as well. I just wanted to outline the background a bit, and if I go beyond 5-10 minutes, please stop me, because I'd like Christina to certainly give her account. Do I have 10 minutes or more or less?
10 minutes, fine, thank you.
Okay, brilliant, thank you very much. We made a few slides, a few presentation. Just a second, I was going to get to my notes, which yes, I got there. Yeah, so first I have to say her name as we agreed. And then 3 names I want to say are Maria Kolesnikova, Marfa Rabkova, and Yulia Shardyka. I'll quickly say a few words about them. Maria Kolesnikova, she was one of the 3 symbols of the Belarus uprising. And she was a member of the Coordination Council, which is the people's-led council to change the power peacefully. She was, you might have seen in the news, she ripped up her passport at the border to avoid being forcibly taken to Ukraine, and she's now imprisoned and charged with incitement to undermine national security, which carries maximum jail term of 5 years. Marfa Rabkova is a volunteer at the Human Rights Center called Yasna, meaning spring, and she's also imprisoned at the moment. And Yulia Shardyka, she is an employee of the IT company called PandaDoc, which was helping the protesters and helping providing support even to security services, employees who were prepared to stand with the people and change sides. And she's one of the 4 PandaDoc employees which are also arrested and detained at the moment. Unfortunately, there are thousands and thousands more detained. We cannot say all of their names, and plenty of victims of torture and rape. Women did not feel prepared to say their names publicly, even for us. They only given their names and accounts for torture investigation. And there are over 500 cases of torture documented, which are now investigated. Just a very quick recap on the Belarus protests for those that perhaps didn't follow very closely. So on this photo, on the photo above, I wanted to show one of the protest icons of the Belarus protests. This is Nina Baginskaya. She's 73 years old. She's a great grandma, and she has been to every protest since Lukashenko came to power, waving the flag, the Belarusian historic flag, which is white, red, and white, which Lukashenko changed. But now it has been brought back by popular acclamation. People are using the colors white, red, and white everywhere, and they are just doing it overnight. They are painting everything they can in those colors. And obviously the police are trying to deface it, take it down, but it just keeps going every day. So this peaceful protest, it was started after the results of the presidential elections were announced in August. And then there was a brutal police and special police force crackdown. At least 4 people were killed. Over 7,000 were detained in the 4 days after the election. It was just, it looked like military hostilities. We were all just horrified to watch from abroad and thinking, what can we do to help? Also, the internet in the country has been blocked, so we didn't know what happened to those we love, to our friends. And now the UN experts received reports of 450 documented cases of torture. Now this figure is up to over 500, I've been informed. And the opposition leaders were expelled from the country by force or imprisoned. Even the head of the Catholic Church was blocked from entering the country after he criticized the government. And so basically Lukashenko, the usurper of the power, has been there for 26 years, and he claimed that he won the elections with 80% of votes, which is a blatant lie, whereas the opposition candidate Svetlana Tikhanovskaya got only 10%. However, we had the elections were not transparent, they were not fair. The independent observers are not allowed into the country. People from local electoral committees were threatened, and lots of ballots were falsified. And yes, when people gone out to the street and started to protest against the results being so falsified, the regime started to use police and military force against the citizens. So everything, water cannons, rubber bullets, stun grenades, it was just horrendous. And now the whole country is protesting now. And of course, the authorities are claiming that the protests are managed from abroad and then the election results are legitimate. Alternative counts shown that Lukashenko actually got 3%, and Svetlana Tikhanovskaya got 97%. That is another story of incredible women organization and solidarity, because she was a teacher and a housewife, and Lukashenko allowed her to be registered as the candidate to run against him after imprisoning her husband, who was a presidential candidate, and imprisoning all the other serious contenders. And he thought, oh, let's just laugh at her. She's only a housewife. She won't get even 5% of the vote. She got 97% of the vote. That was simply incredible. She was just moving from strength to strength, learning to public speak, learning to gather herself and carry on. Although the first thing she wanted to do is rescue her husband and just step down. But everyone said, no, you have to carry on. You have to carry on. And in the presentation, there'll be a few links about how you can follow the events in English at some volunteer-run media centers, as well as obviously the major media outlets also carried reporting this time very well. I will let Christina give the immediate account of the events. And also Victoria, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight after another massive rally. She actually put together a very emotional account of the events, which I might add very quickly after Christina, seeing what things we touch upon. She said that, well, why do women join these protests? And then she said, well, you know, you just can't stay home. You cannot stay home. It's much worse. And she said that her grandma said it's very much like after the war. You don't think, you don't doubt yourself, you don't reflect, you just go and do it because no one else will do it for you. And she says, well, I don't know how it works, but I know for sure that if we stop, nothing good will come of it. And it's a mixture of feeling. It's pride and dignity of the people when they finally started manifesting it, and fear for what might happen, what the hell would break loose if they don't do anything. and despair from the fact that, well, it's very draining, and inner limit has been reached. And so some protesters take children to the marches, some take their dogs, some don't do it, some are deputizing from their family, the rest stay at home. Some are waiting for the husband or wife from the jail to come back home, where some people were tortured. And one thought is unique across everyone that Victoria talked to, said that staying at home is even worse when you try to hide. And she doesn't know how others manage to combine life and protest. She says that she doesn't mix as well, and like she feels she needs already to see a psychologist because it's very heavy. And she is a guide, a tourist guide, and tourism at the moment obviously is not doing well at all. It's going to be a long crisis, and hopefully the country will pull out of it if all ends well. And the feel that people have, you know, how can we do something nice for ourselves? How can we sit in a cafe, you know, get our nails done, go to the movies, sleep in a warm bed, but someone is tortured in custody, in jail, or intimidated. So, well, how did the women's marches started? I will probably leave Christina to say a few things about it. But at the moment, it's affected everyone. It's absolutely everyone, and people have this experience of coping and keeping up, women. It just comes from post-war and post-Soviet periods. People just have to go on and pull everything on their shoulders. And they get incredibly creative, and people, women probably have less escalation of the conflict. They're more constructive, even when they are in chats getting ready for the protest. And they just try to live on in parallel with the struggle, because it's not going to be over in a day. Everyone is clear of that, and they do charity, they do volunteer work, they donate, they collect food for children, they discuss interests, and you know, try to relax a bit. So that's a big plus. And now I just wanted to mention how Belarus actually connects to the world, because it's incredible how many issues actually chime with the rest of the world. Issues like Black Lives Matter and the feminist movement and the Pride movement, and just, you know, a basic movement for human dignity. I just wanted to read you some of Lukashenko's quotes so you can see where I come from, because he managed to offend just about everyone. Yeah, he said about Obama. A few of his racist quotes. It's quite incredible. In fact, many of Belarusian protests, you can see like the Portland War of Moms, you can see women protecting the men, and on the first photo, on the first slide. So a few, learned a few.
It can hurt you when you kind of sucked into a false sense of security, like the goal they scored for Chris Wood. They're in control and they get sucker punched and they find themselves 1-0 down, but have got themselves back into the game. So it's Leicester 1, Burnley 1. Emma Saunders, good evening. Good evening to you, Chris.
Sorry, I think it was some other. Some interference. Yeah, okay, so the quote is, Lukashenko said, Obama in general amazes me. Not so long ago, he said, black people in America were slaves. Today, they declare about the exclusivity of some kind. I never thought that a man who came out of these poor backgrounds would be able to carry out such rhetoric in the world. It's unacceptable. It's very, very extremely dangerous. He said that in 2013 in a TV interview. Then just recently, he said, when he was addressing the people, we don't need overseas governments, we need our own, we're offered new power, we're offered nature soldiers, blacks, yellow-mouthed and white-haired, and they want to put us in the bust shoes and drive us with a whip. It's just shocking how it wasn't really picked up more in the world. Oh, obviously he just sometimes doesn't make any sense what he says. Another thing he said, sexism is just absolutely rife in his government, and it's some of the most sexist quotes he said. It's necessary to have hot water in every agricultural town in the evening so that a milkmaid or a pig woman would get into bed with a man after being washed. He said that at the press conference. Then he liked to surround himself with some sort of escort women. Every time he will have some high-level government meeting, he would surround himself with beautiful girls. And that's one of the things he said. I raise my head, there they go, my beauties, one blonde, the other brunette, and everyone forgot about the documents. Everyone forgot about everything, opened their mouth and are looking at them. And I realized they are really weapons. He said that during a visit to a management academy last year. Another thing, that's why he just didn't believe that a woman could actually get ahead of him and win the election. He said, we had a lot of powers for the president, starting from security to the economy, which so far cannot be performed by a person in a skirt. Another thing he said about the Lithuanian president, who is of course a woman, we are not Lithuania. There, the president, Dalia Grybauskaitė, she came, she smiled, sat down and left. She is not responsible for anything because they have a parliamentary republic and we don't, and the president will be a man. I'm absolutely convinced of that. About the constitution, he said, which of course he tramples upon. He said, our constitution does not fit a woman and our society is not right to vote for a woman because under the constitution, the president has a strong power. And another thing about trying to raise the birth rate in the country because lots of people emigrated and the population really shrunk. He was encouraging people to have more children and to provide various benefits for the third child, which was completely hollow. In the end, it just led to so many problems of limited schools, no kindergartens, and certainly no money was paid under various excuses. So he said, I meet with a women's group at some factory, only young women, and they start talking about children. I say, let's agree, the third child is mine and a little bit yours. The fourth one is 100%, and the fifth, and the next one is mine. Do you agree? I say, what are you silent about? I see, but one needs to give birth. Well, I cannot give birth for you, I say. I can't. And several homophobic quotes.
Elena,
I don't know.
Elena, can we have 2 more minutes?
Yeah. I want. I'll leave all the other quotes aside because they're not really on our topic, but just plenty more to quote from that imposter. Yeah, and I just wanted to, there was one slide, I just wanted to show 2 pictures. After this really hugely successful women's forum, women's marches, which obviously went around the world, there was an alternative women's forum organized for pro-Lukashenko event. So what they did, they scrambled together about 20 buses of poor women who are paid from the budget and work as school teachers. They're completely dependent on the state, completely intimidated, and they were given slogans to hold. I just wanted to show, Dave, I think it's 3rd or 4th slide, not this one, next one, you can see, get back. Yeah, sorry, you didn't get my updated presentation. This one, this one. These 3 lovely ladies, they were all given the red and green flag to hold, and given the slogan to hold, but the slogan had a very hilarious typo. Obviously, they didn't get prepared themselves. The typo says, we won't let the country be ruined. It was supposed to be. But with the typo, it says, we won't let the country be developed, which is a very Italian slip. And all that is in stark contrast with the creativity, with the openness, and with amazing art, protest art of the self-organized protest. And at the last slide, I just endeavored to put some examples of that. And people are extremely creative. You can see a Banksy imitation, you can see people using white, red and white and everything. People were actually arrested for wearing those colors. So they started being creative, started hanging out underwear, bras and knickers in that combination, painting everything they can in the national colors. And I just put this flag and the emblem on there because on Saturday, there was also the Day of the National Flag and the symbol. It was formally adopted before Lukashenko came to power. Lukashenko tried to get rid of it because it's very powerful. You can see the colors are very powerful. And I just learned an amazing thing today that actually, these colors, they have meaning in other countries. Yeah, I think I would stop hogging the space, and it would be great to hear an impression from Christina about her impression of the protest and the women's issues.
Thank you. Thank you very much
Hello,
indeed,
everyone.
especially for all the
I
work. Sorry, Christina, please.
hear me well? Hello. It's, well, I think it is a problem of my internet connection. It's not very good, but I hope that you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Sorry. Now it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, yes, I would like probably to add a few words to everything that Elena said. Actually, she was absolutely right that, well, all that our women's movement started after presidential elections. And, well, you know now what happened, and the elections were falsified, and actually a lot of people went on protests. And on the first days, on the 9th of August, the 10th of August, 11th of August, a lot of men were brutally detained. They were beaten, they were sometimes even shot, and well, that 3 days, they were really awful, and a lot of people in Belarus, they were shocked by what was going on here. And people understood that all the brutal protests that was, you know, so that was so shocking for us that women decided to step in. And after like 3 days, there was a day when women decided to join, because it was completely obvious that if men continued doing the same, more and more detains and the rest would come. So I think it was probably on the 12th of August when the first Women's March was on. So ladies just gathered together in the center of the city. They were wearing white, and they were holding flowers. And it was, you know, like the symbol of peaceful protests, that we don't want to fight. We don't want any kind of provocations, any kind of crime to happen more. We just want to stop all that. And we just want them to hear us. That's it, nothing else. And actually, I also attended one of that first women's chains of solidarity myself. And like Elena citated Victoria, yes, that was the reason that you just simply couldn't stay at home. And I remember there was one day in the row, that first days when I stayed at home, and that was completely terrible, because you were reading the news, everything was going on, you couldn't do anything. And the next day I said to my husband that I just couldn't stay at home anymore, and I would go to join women in the chain of solidarity. So there were, you know, a lot of chains of solidarity everywhere in all parts of the city. So women were going there, holding that flowers and so on and so forth. And all that thing actually stopped all that cruelty, all that anger that was before. So probably policemen were, so to say, afraid to detain women who were completely peaceful. So they were doing nothing wrong. So they were just staying and holding flowers and asking just to stop all that terrible things that were going on. That's it. And it helped. So actually, there were no arrests in those days after that women chains of solidarity. And after that, women decided to continue. So they were going on marches each Saturday. And even today, we still do that, the same. And for several weeks after, normally on Saturdays, women were not detained, but unfortunately it changed 2 weeks ago. They started again arresting women, and today they do that even brutally again. For example, yesterday when we had the Women's March, about 400 women were detained. Just for you to compare, today we had the regular Sunday march, and over 100,000 Belarusians participating, including men and women. And about 200 people all over Belarus were detained. So it means that at the moment they even are afraid of women, so to say, so they try to detain more women probably, or what is the reason, nobody knows. And actually a lot of women joined that movement. I can't say that it's only, you know, one part of the society. No, you can meet students, you can meet working class, you can meet also retired people like Nina Baginskaya, for example, who's 73 years old. And all day they join together and they come. Yeah, some of them, they want to defend men. Actually, during Sunday marches that are for both sexes, quite often women are trying to defend men, because it used to be that policemen were eager to detain men more than women. And women were just circling men and not letting them out. So just trying to keep them inside in that circle to save them, not to let them to the riot police. So sometimes even women were trying to hide with their bodies, the bodies of men who were laying on the ground when the riot police were beating them. So again, to defend them with their bodies, because they were thinking that they wouldn't beat a lady, so to say. That is why women actually had to step in. The first reason was to defend men. Men couldn't do anything. It was very cruel, and women actually did. They did some help. So we continue our struggle, and we hope, of course, that it will be resultful and that we will have all the things that we are fighting for: new elections, new president, and also safety and the basic things that should be in every country. So if you have any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for keeping to the time. It's really inspiring to hear from you, and solidarity from every one of us here. Can we now hear from South Africa, please, from Nomsa? I hope I've pronounced it correctly. Sorry, Nomsa. I think we've lost her. So in that case, we will, the next person on our list. Yes?
I see Nomsa's name is on the list of the participants, so it might be she's just trying to switch on her microphone. Do you want to try once more?
Okay, Nomsa, I'll wait here to see if Nomsa, I thought her name disappeared from the list. She's here, but she's muted. Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see you. Great. Hi, Nomsa. Thank you. Would you like to speak next?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Can everybody else hear? Yes, please speak.
My name is Nomsa Sizani. I am from Abahlali Basemjondolo movement in South Africa, which is a shack dwellers movement in South Africa that fights for, protects, promotes, and advances the interests of shack dwellers and all impoverished people in South Africa. I am also a member of Women's League of Abahlali Basemjondolo and also a leader in Women Can Do It campaign. Abahlali Basemjondolo, since they were formed from 2005, we have been facing the brutal evictions from the state. And these evictions, mostly they affect women because some of us as women, we are single parents. We don't have husbands. And there is a brutality. They affect us the most because most of the time when they come do this demolition of our houses, they shoot us, they tear gas us, they even use live ammunition. As I'm speaking, at Abahlali Basemjondolo, we have lost 18 comrades because of this brutality from the law enforcement officials and from the SAPS. People who are supposed to protect us, which are the police, they are the ones who are brutally beating us. They are the ones who are brutally shooting at us. This is the really serious problem that we are facing as shack dwellers. The police are so brutal to us. The law enforcement is so brutal to us. And one more thing that we are facing as Abahlali Basemjondolo women, we have been denied basic services as Abahlali Basemjondolo. Now, when we are supposed to get water to wash for our children and cook for our children, we have to walk like 3 to 4 kilometers to fetch water. And that is exposing us into rape and being killed. The problem that we are facing during these evictions, we are being traumatized. These evictions are traumatizing us. These evictions are traumatizing our children. Abahlali women are like living in a trauma, anxiety, and depression. As I'm speaking, during the time of lockdown, our president in South Africa has announced that there will be no lockdown during the time of pandemic. But there was the evictions, and 29 brave women of Abahlali Women's League were arrested. Their sin was just to sleep in an open space outside after their homes were demolished. So in our country where we are living, there is a lot of injustice. A lot of inequality, especially women, because if you did mostly women, affects mostly women. As I'm talking, 2016 we have lost a young girl, 17 years, during the protest of base services. A 17-year was killed by these people who are with impunity. Because in the country that we are living, there is no justice. And one more thing that I have seen during this time of pandemic, most women are living in an abusive relationships because of poverty, by unemployment. The rate of unemployment in South Africa is too high, and it affects mostly women because now they are forced to stay in abusive relationships because of poverty. They are being abused physically, they are being abused emotionally, but they still stay there because of rate of unemployment in South Africa is less.
Excuse me, Nomsa, we aren't hearing you properly. Could you switch your video off and just use the audio and we might hear you better? It's to do with the bandwidth on the video. Is that better?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes, thank you.
You can hear me now?
I can hear you, but it might be better if you switch your video off. If you can do that. I don't know if you have the technology to do that. Otherwise, continue. We're really interested in what you're saying. Just continue. Sorry, Nomsa, just carry on. We'll manage. Go on.
So sorry, I think the problem is with my network. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh, we've lost you completely now. Well, that is such a shame.
Felicity, give Nomsa a minute.
Yes, you can hear me. Yeah. You lost me completely. Oh, network.
No, we can hear you a bit now. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now? Of where I am because of the network.
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Go ahead, Nomsa, we can hear you.
I'm not convinced you can hear us, actually. I have tried putting a message in the chat. I don't know whether somebody else has put one in.
But man, turn it off my video. No, that's going to turn it off my video.
Okay, Dave, can you keep an eye and see if Nomsa can come back to us? And she has. Can you hear us, Nomsa?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, great.
Yes, I can hear you.
Very pleased. Right, please continue.
Yes, I will continue. Now, as Abahlali baseMjondolo, what we think violence against women must be criminalized in courts. Any action of abuse must be categorized as a major offense. As Abahlali baseMjondolo women, we think we should organize and mobilize. As a working class, we need to organize ourselves because there is a power in organizing and there's a power in mobilizing to build a just and equal society based on respect for all humankind, irregardless of gender. Because we see, it seems as if as women, we are not treated like human beings. We are treated like we are just animals or we are just things. So we believe that as working class, we need to be united and we need to be in solidarity with each other. I am very sorry of my network.
Nomsa, that was wonderful. Thank you. Our next speaker was going to be, the next one was going to be Lou from Doncaster, but who would speak things very close to what Nomsa's been talking about the deaths of women in her town from domestic violence. But Lou's had to leave us to go to work. I do know that we have a comrade here from Sister Space, and I will try and bring her in a little bit later, who has a similar issue from Lou's, but in London. Can we now move to Jabu, please? Can Jabu speak next?
Yes, good evening all. Good evening.
Evening, Jabu.
Hi, Jabu.
Hello, hello. Good evening, comrades. In solidarity with our sisters across the world, our international discourses as women are linking us on so many issues. I'm Jabu Nala. I'm based in Oxford. I live in Oxford. I've lived in Oxford for over 30 years. I'm originally from South Africa, so it's quite fitting that I should follow Usis Nomsa after her talk. My background quickly is to say I was raised by a trade unionist. My mother was the first General Secretary of MAU, which later became NUMSA in South Africa. But we moved to Oxford in the 80s, where she came to study at Ruskin College. So that's my politics around what molded my politics in terms of my background through my mother's politics. And one of the things that I kept resonating with me when I saw the these women in struggle today, I can remember an early memory of my mother being brought back by the special branch South African police in South Africa, where she was coming back from detention after a couple of months of burnings and torture. She came back and they drove her home with a brown car. I remember they had a yellow football, which this man who was wearing a suit threw at me, and I was really excited as a child, and I caught that football and I said, "Oh, thank you, Baba," which is a sign of respect. We call everybody father. And my mother turned around in her frail body after a long time in detention and said, "That's not Baba, that's the dog." So that was my molding of my politics and understanding the harsh realities of how what women are facing in the world. I now live in Oxford. I came through Oxford through her, but I've been in Oxford for all my adult life. I'm the Oxford Living Wage Campaign Chair. So through the Oxford Living Wage Campaign Chair, I've been mobilizing around Oxford issues pertaining to work issues. The mobilization is basically driven forward by faith groups, students, trade unions, and we also include employers in terms of trying to motivate them to keep on paying the living wage. So I'm gonna be in and out because I don't only do the Oxford Living Wage. I'm very active in the Oxford Black Lives Matter. I was also one of the major speakers in the Rhodes Must Fall, where about 5,000 of us gathered around the Cecil Rhodes statue in Oxford, and we were calling for its demise. We're excited about the Bristol imagery of seeing Adam Costin rolling across the city of Bristol into the canal. So the Oxford scene has been very much driven by the background of what's been going on globally in terms of the Black Lives Matter. We have also felt the urgency to join the Black Lives Matter and to actually have our voices heard. The significance of this to this day, today's talk, is that it was also mostly driven by young women. It was mostly young women in the front line who were calling for a lot of demands in terms of how the Black communities of Oxford have been treated in terms of understanding how the inequalities in Oxford affect a lot of Black communities. Right now in Oxford, we are still in a situation whereby, sorry, my son has just passed with his music here. Yeah, so we are basically living in a city whereby when you talk to people about living in Oxford, people have the impression that you are living in the creme de la creme of the world, and yet the reality is the opposite. Oxford has a historical town and gown divide. We live in the outskirts. I live in the outskirts of Oxford, where we've been affected by a lot of issues that are affecting major cities in terms of poverty, in terms of gender discourse in terms of all the things that are affecting major cities, major towns where capitalism prevails, and we are affected by low wages. We are affected in my area where I live in, which is in Haddington, Barton. It featured heavily on Philip Alston's report on children living in poverty. And people wouldn't think there are children living in poverty in Oxford, but there you are. So the Oxford Living Wage campaign tries to consolidate all those issues together, to the point that a couple of weeks ago, on the 22nd of August, we mobilized a unity march right across Oxford, which culminated in at least 30 organizations joining the Solidarity March across our city. It was fantastic. We had people from Climate Justice, which is Extinction Rebellion, to ACON, housing unions, to tenancy unions, to Common Ground, students, faith groups, all sorts of groups came together, lifted their banners high in the Oxford landscape to actually challenge injustice. It was interesting because when I think of ACON, there was something going on in the courts because the judges were about to issue the first eviction notices for tenants that weren't paying. So there was quite a big challenge. And seemingly, this seems to be a really exciting point in terms of trade unions and the people who are there, because now with us being faced with job losses and high redundancies in right across the UK, but also affected in Oxford, this solidarity formation, it's now becoming a really good platform in terms of just rallying Oxford right across a different organization and saying there's this issue. As I speak right now, the people that are fighting under ACI and Black Lives Matter for reparations have called another march on the 26th of September, which is this weekend, to actually fight for reparations. There's been a lot of debates about it because of the worries in terms of the restrictions that have been reintroduced by the government as to whether we can gather as big marches that we've seen in the past a couple of months with regards to Black Lives Matter. So, on the other hand, with all that, I'm also part of Mothers for Justice. I founded an organization, Mothers for Justice for Ubuntu, with a friend of mine who I grew up with, Michelle Corrington. She's the president. She's the first Black president of NASAUT, which is a teachers union. This organization we founded is trying to focus on challenging the criminal justice system, the fact that most of our youth are disproportionately affected by the unrest and high mass incarceration and mass detentions and all the things that affect people that are involved with the criminal justice system. So we're trying to push so many fronts in this, in this current period, because it's not just the wages, you've got the housing issues, you've got the justice issues regarding the criminal justice system. So I'm forever all over the place. Also, I'm also part of the Labour Party. I'm currently standing as a councillor in my area, which is, as I said earlier, a deprived area in terms of the attainment, education attainment. It's in a bad shape. So the Mothers for Justice, going back to the Mothers for Justice, we are trying to focus on bringing advocacy in terms of the people that find themselves in the hands of the criminal justice system. We've already sort of formed a couple of programs whereby we're hoping
Jabu,
to.
can I ask you to finish in 2 minutes?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So basically, as I said, I'm all over the place because there's so many things that we're doing. But what I wanted to resonate within this meeting is to say that the political activism isn't dead. We are very highly motivated as women to be fighting on these fronts, and we are continuing to grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jabu. You make me feel tired listening to all the things you do, but thank you very much. Right. The next person I'd like to bring in is Amy, who's going to speak instead of Lou from Doncaster about Women's Lives Matter there. Amy, can we, because we're running very short of time, can we keep it to 5 minutes?
Oh, my internet dipped out as you were speaking to me, but I think you said, can you keep it to 5 minutes, which I think I can. Just wave at me if I talk over. Okay, so Louise Harrison and I are part of a campaign called Women's Lives Matter, which very, very briefly started in Doncaster, which is an ex-mining community in the UK. It's a town which has a lot of poverty, very high unemployment, a lot of women working in the care sector, and in the UK we have domestic violence refuges, which was fought for and won by the women's movement in the 60s and 70s. And basically the local council were cutting our local domestic violence service, and we started our campaign. They fought for the money back, and then she set up a new service, which the council said less than a year later that they were going to cut again. So since 2016, we've been trying to campaign against cuts to women's domestic violence services. For those of you who don't know, the UK has been through a decade of really, really brutal cuts to welfare services. And because it's only recently that domestic violence services were even, like local councils didn't have to legally fund them, it's meant that in the past 10 years, they've been brutally cut. What we've been trying to do since then is to campaign against austerity as a whole, because what we recognize is that yes, it is domestic violence services that have been some of the most brutally cut, and that specialist Asian and Black women's services have been the most cut. So we recognize, and we just started as a local community campaign, but we've tried to broaden out to campaign against all austerity. As people know that under COVID and the lockdown, domestic violence has soared. And in Doncaster, we, in a 7-week period, 5 women were murdered by men. Can you hear me? I think my internet's not great.
Amy, perhaps switch your video off.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Is that a bit better?
Much better.
Okay. So as I was saying, in a 7-week period in Doncaster, in June, July time, 5 women were murdered by men, and we we called a vigil for the murder of 1 woman, and by the end of the week, we were holding it for 4 women, because every other day we found out about another woman that had been murdered in the town. And that vigil got 400, I mean, we didn't know how many people would turn up, but then 400 people turned up in the town. So what we're looking at in the UK is rising rates of domestic violence. Anyway, we went into the 2020 with rising domestic violence rates and increasingly fewer services that women can actually flee to. And there is someone from Sister Space, which I'm just going to say a tiny little bit about that. And I don't know if Rose wants to speak, but I think she should, because Sister Space is the only service in London that is a specialist service for Afro-Caribbean women. And they didn't have their funds directly cut like our service did. But they were being kicked out of a council building because essentially that the council wanted to gentrify that. She can tell it much better than I can. But the point that I'm trying to make is that we're seeing a massive, massive attack on domestic violence services in the UK. And we're seeing an increase in domestic violence. What we wanted to raise is that that this isn't just a national thing, it's an international thing, and that we will be having a conversation with campaigns like Sister Space and others, hopefully next week, about potentially doing a day of action in the UK against the lack of action that our government has taken to help domestic violence victims, but also because they've cut our services for the past 10 years. But I think we also need to recognise that it's not just that they're coming for our services, they're coming for our National Health Service, they're coming for our welfare services. And so I think, as we've discussed throughout all of these discussions, that it's often women that, well, it is women that are that face the most brutal end of cuts cuts to services. And so I think that, as others have pointed out, women alone can't take on the battle that is ahead. We need to work with all ordinary people, because all ordinary people are going to be affected by the austerity that's to come in the UK. And so the discussions that we'll be having with Sister Space in the next week and some other campaigns is to look at how we can get a day of action against domestic violence cuts and the lack of action the government has taken. But I would just like to put a call out that if there's any other groups here internationally that would like to set an international day of action, because this is something that is affecting women globally, that the lack of, if we go into another lockdown in the UK, we will see more women's deaths, and that's not just going to happen in the UK. So yeah, just put a call out to any group or person that wants to potentially link on action around that. And I really hope that Rose from Sister Space can say a few words on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And we have to say goodbye to Zira. Zira Khan has had to leave us. I said it was very late for her. Can I quickly bring in Rose from Sister Space?
Good afternoon. Can you see me? Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Yes.
Thank you for allowing me just a quick time just to talk about Sister Space, and to thank all the other speakers as well. Absolutely amazing. I have learned a lot, so thank you. My name is Rose. I'm from Sister Space, a charity specializing with African and Caribbean heritage women and girls for domestic violence, sexual abuse and domestic abuse. We were in a space that was basically unsafe. We'd been in there for 5 years, and eventually, because I'm in London, we're in London, by the way, and we were put into a temporary space whilst the current space we were in was being refurnished. During the COVID period, that was in June, after the space was done, we were told that we had to go back to the old space, and we said that, well, we shouldn't be having to move during COVID, particularly as in London the rate for African and Caribbean people with COVID was very, very high. That was out there, it was well known. So we said, can we just stay in the current space we were in until the COVID period was over? And the borough where we live, which is Hackney, they said no. So we were saying, well, we can't move. And this went back and forth, back and forth. We were still saying that the space we were in was a very, very safe space due to security reasons and everything, because the old space is like a shop front. It's one room and there was a lot wrong. But anyway, things escalated, and we had some protests and everything, and about just under a month ago we were evicted from this current space that we were in, despite giving every possible reason and truth about the old space, why we couldn't go back. The council did not take on anything on board. Also, there was a kind of media campaign that was going on. They started to put everything about us on their social media page. They refuted everything that we said. They put all our names out there. It's just a really nasty campaign, really, by Hackney Council, because we're just a very small charity doing the work that Hackney Council couldn't do or are not able to do. But prior to that, we were all, you know, the mayor used to come to the old space, so he knew what it was like. A lot of the councillors and MPs come to that space. And when we had a protest, the Doncaster women, which is with Amy, and then they reached out to us and they came down. And since then, it's been really wonderful in terms of solidarity, etc. And at the moment, we will be in mediation with Hackney at the end of the month to do with the current space we were evicted from. But yeah, so we are Sister Space, SISTAH Space. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. So if you'd like to know it more, that is the story. But again, just hearing from the other speakers the same stories of the domestic abuse and domestic violence services that are just not being treated at all. But it's lovely to hear about all the solidarity and all the ideas and moving forward, and we keep fighting it. So thank you very much for the time to speak about Sister Space.
And thank you, Rose, for joining in at such short notice and making a contribution. Thank you. Now, we're not just here to say how bad things are. We're here to say what we're going to do and how we're going to make each other's struggles stronger, linking up with each other. Is there anybody else here from a different struggle that would like to say a word? We are going to open it up for general discussion, but if there's a woman from a country or a struggle that's not been heard, please can you raise your hand electronically and we'll take you in now. Can't see anybody. Let me double check this. I can't see anyone with their hand raised on that basis. Now, I know we have a lot of women here with a lot of history of struggle. So we'll open the general discussion and then we'll come back just towards the end with a discussion of how we are going to move forward and use our joint strength to make sure we have more victories and build the struggle even stronger. Right, so hands up, please. Anyone who wants to speak. Well, I seriously got no one. Dave, am I not seeing hands raised?
David Hempson's just raised his hand.
Okay, David.
Felicity and everybody, I should be the last to speak, not the first, and coming into some marvelous discussions. I think, you know, some of the issues which have been raised are, you know, quite diverse, you know, but one of the central issues is the question of how women are being demeaned. I quoted, or we played Namatai speaking in relation to the rape of women in Zimbabwe. And, you know, rape right now is being used as a weapon of war, not only in war struggles, but actually in the war that many regimes are waging against the people. if they could break the women who are the defenders of the men, of movements, and of the children, then they can demoralize a whole section of the population. And that's why we need to think of every way of integrating ways of defending women in the movement so that women are able to play, to be able to advance as they wish, you know, to take their leading role, a defending role, a side role, a leading role again. All of this, which we've seen in Belarus, which we've seen in Black Lives Matter, and in many other struggles, particularly in South Africa now, we've been forced back in some ways because of the COVID militarization of the college regulations and the like. And I think we need to make all the links possible between what's happening in the political arena and the labor movement, the way in which we're fighting against the cuts, and the way in which we're advancing ideas about organizing street vendors in Zimbabwe, South Africa, and internationally, so that women can actually, you know, have a life, can actually be able to defend their families and to be able to nurture their families if that's where they wish to take up their prime responsibility. Or, as some women have indicated, and Ilana mentioned this to me, some women in Belarus have actually decided not to have children, so they can actually play more of a political role, more of an analytical role, more of a leading role in other ways. So we need to discuss some of these diverse ideas and bring the, you know, the experience of the marvelous experience from a whole range of continents and of experience and different contexts together, and see how we can draw together, you know, the questions we're addressing. Everywhere there's an issue of democracy. Yesterday, my daughter was asking me, just by the way, how is it that poor people, working people, are the vast majority in the world, and yet nowhere do we see change? Well, we do see change, but it's counter-revolutionary change. She's talking about the fact that she's not got a bonus this year, no increase in the teacher's salary, and actually no truth about what's going on in relation to the schools. And that's what we are primarily addressing. That question, how can the working class, working people, women come together, and so that we can effect a democratic change, a democratic revolution, which is going to bring all the social transformation we're demanding, all the resources to bear on every problem that we've got, and resolve them, and move on to a socialist future. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I again say, if there's anyone here from a country that's not been mentioned, or a struggle that's not been mentioned, we are more than happy to hear from you. I'm still not seeing hands raised. I'm not sure if this is a technical problem or that people are stunned. Can I, while people are thinking about what they might say, speak a little bit about some of the struggles around the health service in Britain that are going on, where, of course, the health service is something like 90% of hands-on care in the health and social care sector is done by women, and they have seen us through the pandemic and are going to have to see us through the next stage of the pandemic. You know, Mao said women hold up half the sky. Well, they hold up a lot more of the NHS. And the strength of those women, and the strength of the women working in retail and other places during this pandemic has been stunning. But we've also got lots of women who are raising children without enough money to fund them properly or feed them properly, and that's causing, you know, a real ferment. And yet, despite this, it's often the women who are running the mutual aid. I've worked, it's worked, I've talked, and people don't want to hear me anymore. So I'll call the other people who put their hands up. Can I call Pat Horn, please?
Hi, everybody. This is Pat Horn. Oh, let me put my video so you can see me for a while anyway. Pat Horn from South Africa, from Durban. And So my country has been spoken about. Even what I work in, which is working with workers in the informal economy, has also been talked about by Zara from Pakistan. She talked about home-based workers. I've been working with workers in other sectors of the informal economy, and street traders is one of the groups that you had a speaker for, but she hasn't been able to make it, Lorraine Sibanda from Zimbabwe. I'm not going to say much because it's late, well, for those of us who live on this side of the world. But just to briefly say that the struggle of women to make livelihoods, particularly in the informal economy, because many kinds of work in the informal economy are dominated by women. Street vendors in Africa, Latin America, most parts of Asia. I know it's different in South Asia. And then waste pickers, home-based workers who Zara has talked about in detail, are all domestic workers, community health workers who in South Africa they euphemistically called volunteers, but it really means that they're informal workers. They don't have fixed salaries. They get things called stipends, and they also get sent out into the field without any PPEs to protect them. And during the COVID, they've been called on even more than before. So the women who work in all these different kinds of work are people who don't have employers they can make their demands to. And when COVID came, many of them had to stop working when there were lockdowns. And then some countries have managed to put in place some sort of basic income grant, but in most countries not, especially in the global south. In South Africa, we fought for one, which eventually, after about a month, we got a very, very small one, which is so small that most workers in the informal economy just prefer to go back to work, even though they have to pay for their own PPEs because nobody else provides them for them. But it's still better for them to weather the risks and to go back to work just to make a livelihood. So it's something we can probably talk about more in the follow-up. I'm not going to go into detail. There's obviously a lot that can be said, but I could really relate to what Zara was saying about home-based workers in Pakistan, and which is, suffers from many same problems as other workers in the informal economy. And then there are other things that are specific to these different sectors. But the women who work in all of these, in many, many cases, are de facto heads of their families. Technically speaking, they might not be recognized as the head of the family if there's a man who lives in the house. Many of them actually don't have men who live in the house anymore. But most of them are economically heads of their households. And you can imagine in patriarchal society, which we all live in, that causes a lot of contradictions in the household. And it's also often one of the things that leads to the kind of tensions that's leading to this increase in gender-based violence that we're seeing all over the place, where there's been lockdowns and people have been forced into each other's company, and just a skyrocketing of gender-based violence. Often where the women who are supporting the family get hammered because they have too much power. That's another thing which would probably be interesting to discuss.
Yeah.
How when women do get a bit more power, they get more violated physically. So I just wanted to say those brief things. Put on the agenda the question of work in the informal economy, much of which is done by women, not all types. In the transport sector, it's still much more male dominated. The fishing sector here in South Africa is also more male dominated, the subsistence fishing sector. But a lot of these types are female dominated, and the women who do that are often supporting families without other sources of income in the household. And so it's been extremely tough because they also don't have social protection, so that when they can't work under lockdowns, there isn't anything else. So that's why it's been necessary for people to go back to work, even when they fear for their health and for the risk of being infected. So let me leave it for that for today. I think we're going to be having some follow-up. I look forward to learning much more about what all of you are doing.
Thank you very much, Pat. We definitely are going to do a follow-up. I've got 2 people left to speak, and we've got 15 minutes. So can I say sort of 2.5 minutes each, please? But we are going to have a follow-up meeting, and we will take the issues that we don't cover today at a follow-up meeting. Probably at a time when Zira can get some sleep and Lou isn't. Lou doesn't have to go off to work nights. Can I ask? Sorry, the comrade who wants to speak about wearing the veil, the hijab. Aisha.
Hi. Sorry, I don't really know what to say, but I'm just gonna say it. I was just gonna talk about how being, you know, a Muslim teenager in Oxford, living in Oxford, is quite hard, and it's like people think we're oppressed or we've been forced to, especially, you know, like in Western countries, that we're like oppressed or we're forced or someone's forced us, but that's not the case. And they assume this and they think we need to be liberated, but we choose, majority of the time, we do choose to dress the way we dress. And it's quite sad because we're 3 times more likely to be unemployed and to be looking for jobs. By a survey done by some MPs, that Muslim women were more economically disadvantaged than other social groups. And they tend to feel more invisible and discriminated in workplaces. And I hope this changes in this narrative that I really feel like has been portrayed by the media to show us as oppressed, and that fact that we need help and that we don't really have a voice and we're dominated by our husbands or like the men in our life. And I really hope that does change, because we do have voices and we are strong, independent females. And I hope that changes and people stop assuming such things, and that people don't see us as oppressed, and hopefully we have a more easier time adjusting into society. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And on that point, Lou Harrison was talking about similar kinds of insults to a woman as part of her group. So we do need to tie these notes together. We need to make sure that if one person's, you know, insulted in that way, a lot of people can know to respond in solidarity. Thank you, Aisha, for speaking.
Thank you. And I just quickly wanted to say, we started off an organisation called Help the World Oxford, in which we're trying to bring light to such issues. So if anyone wants to check us out, you can go ahead and do that. Thank you.
Say
Aisha, again, sorry. Can I quickly say, Aisha, can you join the Oxford Unity so we can get to know you?
Oh, of course I do. I'm on it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. But the last comrade who's speaking is Leslie.
I'll just see if my video will come on. Oh, just so brilliant to hear all those people. Thank you, Felicity, for organising that, and a great turnout. Just to say that, you know, the health service, you know, is one of the key issues, you know, across the world. And here we know that 75% of the health and social care workforce are women, a high proportion, as well as a high proportion of BAME deaths. Out of that as well, there's a high proportion of nurses and care workers at the front line, and a lot of them are women. So several hundred women have died in an advanced, rich country that has no excuse, you know, to have made the mess, except for you know, for capitalism. But I just want to talk for 1 minute about the young nurses, because they've self-organised, and really their anger, particularly as student nurses and young workers, in putting their lives on the line and then being slapped in the face by the government to be told you can't have a pay rise. They've had a 20% cut in pay over the last number of years, and they're demanding a 15% pay rise. And these young women, two of the young women who organised the first nurses demonstration, it was their first demonstration they'd ever been on, and they organised it. And that's the music, I think, as well, of the future of a lot of the struggles that we'll see. Completely new, completely fresh. And obviously, us old hands have been completely supporting them and helping them in whatever way we could. But also the other thing is, they're knocking and kicking at the trade union's door to say, listen to us. We're on the front line. You listen to us. We want 15%, never mind 2.5% or whatever. And they've actually getting somewhere with some of the unions, although that will be a hard struggle. And again, the Black Lives Matter, the second demonstration I went on, a Black Lives Matter, 7,000 people during just after the lockdown was easing, but 7,000 people, and many, many young women, many dressed in very different ways, hijabs, hijabs, running shorts, the lot, every age group, every nationality, but many young people and many young women, I would say predominantly young women on that. So brilliant. Again, the climate strikes, that was mainly young women. We had the young A-level students protesting. About 100 or so turned up at literally a day or two's notice. They self-organised, and it was virtually all young women, about 90% young women who organised that protest. So I think we will see a lot more protests against austerity. We've got round the corner from me, there's going to be a protest over a care home closure. And again, it's non-union staff and families, but they're getting organised to protest against the council. So our job is to link all those struggles together, both here and across the world, because we've got the fighting against the system in common, but we have to take practical steps as well to make sure that those issues are on the agenda all the time, and also practical steps to make sure that women can be involved. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much, Leslie. We've got a very short time. I'm hoping that we can finish this at 9 o'clock. But we are not here just to listen and to say, oh, about things. We're here to organise. We're here to make sure that what strength we each of us have and each of our organisations have is shared and shared across the world. I was talking to Tia earlier about, what happens when comrades, women comrades go to prison, and saying that when anti-fascist women go to prison in this country, we make sure that their mailbox is absolutely full. We send all of the time. We send letters, we send cards, and those cards and letters are seen by the authorities and seen by the other by the other inmates, to show the level of strength and the level of support that's out there for them. It's a tiny thing, but it's really important as well. And I think that maybe we can look at some kind of mail bombardment of Zimbabwe to show people to show the government in Zimbabwe that we are listening, we are hearing what they're doing, and we will not tolerate this abuse that they're visiting on the activist women. And similarly, full support for the comrades in Belarus. We're hoping that next week we can have a follow-up meeting. Amy certainly has been taking notes, and I'd be interested if any individual, women here want to actually follow up a particular thread. We've just heard from Pat that she's interested in following up the informal worker section. You don't have to tell me now. Contact me or contact David, who's very much part of pulling this meeting together, so that we can actually make this concrete and make sure that all of the media outlets, social media, websites, anything that we've got can reflect the level of struggle that we're seeing here. Can we have the last couple of minutes of comments from people who'd like to do something about the follow-up? got it. Anyone want to say anything directly about the follow-up? David, do you want to say anything more?
Well, if I could take advantage of the invitation, first of all, I should say that I want to pay a tribute to Felicity pulling all this together. You've done a marvelous job, Felicity. You've spoken to people who, you know, right across many continents. You've met people, quote unquote, on the phone, WhatsApp, and all the rest of it, and really inspired, you know, the response that we've had. I'd also like to thank people like, you know, Pat Horn, who've come up, you know, at the last minute and enthusiastically joined in, of Sarah, who stayed up all night, it seems, you know, to have participated, of so many people who've given everything that they can to this discussion. Now, you know, I put down, if you want to look in chat, about 4 or 5 themes that I've identified, including, you know, how do we integrate quote unquote women's issues, because they're not women's issues, they're issues of humanity, of how we defend ourselves against the police, how we defend ourselves against forms of criminality which are very socially destructive, such as rape and domestic abuse, which tear apart the families, tear apart male and female, which tearing apart the working class when we're trying to rise to our feet. So that's one issue. Then other issues are, you know, how do we put together a program? How do we link up internationally? I mean, the marvelous part of this meeting has been that we've really been hearing women speaking to each other. The issues are quite diverse at times. At other times they pull together quite strongly. But how do we get our voices united and in close collaboration and support of each other? We've heard of the disastrous situation in Zimbabwe. Well, at least a part of it. I'll be circulating a resolution which is, you know, to be used towards a day of action on Wednesday, the 23rd, in support of horrendous conditions in Zimbabwe. Elena mentioned that red and white are the colors in Belarus. Can I say red and white are the colors in Zimbabwe? Those are the colors that the prisoners wear. Now everyone who's in struggle is wearing the red and white T-shirts, pullovers, and other garments to be able to show solidarity. We would ask for solidarity with Zimbabwean women, men, Democrats, working class, the unions, and so forth. And I've circulated that up on the WIM Facebook and elsewhere. I'd be very keen to see if comrades could take those resolutions out to the different organizations they're in. But most of all, I'd like to see if we could draw ideas together. I've asked that, you know, we should try and make notes. That's a tremendous idea, Felicity, that we can try and pull together these themes so that we can address, we've had a huge outpouring of ideas and experiences. Sometimes maybe internet has let us down a bit, but we've heard you in different ways. And this is what I'd like us to be able to build in the next session, to be able to see how do we help develop a program of women's demands? How do we effectively support each other? Tia is at times right in the front line, at other times pushed into the back line, at other times pushed into the classroom to have to earn a living, but always engaged. And how do we, and yet somewhat isolated, because, you know, Kentucky is not the center of the universe at times. And yet, you know, there are huge battles going on there, and sometimes very confusing battles, because the ruling strata, the ruling class in America is doing all kinds of, up to every kind of trick, apart from acknowledging the crimes that had been undertaken against Black people in movement, and sometimes just on the streets. Living Black is not easy in America, as it's not easy in South Africa, as it's not easy in Zimbabwe. So we want to try and bring these experiences together. These experiences sometimes horrify us, sometimes unite us. Together, we've got to put ideas about how we then build our strengths and put them, bring them together. I put down some ideas. please let's put down ideas, maybe questions and suggestions, so that we could have a session on next Sunday, which will pull these ideas together, and maybe we could put together notes then, which would be nothing pretentious, but at least working documents, a working statement of how we are moving ahead. And Felicity, maybe we could then ask and make an invitation to people, maybe even to selected people, to help us speak to the issues, and other people to speak and support or qualify the way in which we're putting the issues, and so that we're building maximum unity and struggle, at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. I did suggest to David that that he set up a WhatsApp group for anyone who wants to be involved in those discussions, so that we can get things together. But we really do need, I've got a lot of people's emails on this, but I haven't got everyone's. Anyone who wants mine, you can write it down now. It's Fel Dowling, FELDOWLING @yahoo.co.uk. And you're more than welcome to contact me over it. But we will be in touch as best we can in the course of the next week, aiming to have a follow-up meeting next week. Now, thank you very much. Thank you to Elena for all the work she did in making this possible. Thank you for Tia for coming. I know it's dreadfully hard for Tia at the moment. Thank you to the comrades from all across the world who've spoken today, and those comrades who would like to have got into discussion and haven't been able to. Please stay in touch. We can change the world, but to do so, we've got to change. We've got to win the case for women first. Thank you very much. Thank you for the meeting.
Sono i confini, rosse bandiere,